Last night we met our speaker for this week, Professor Don Carson. For those of you who weren't here, he's a professor of New Testament at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in the States. He's a well-known author and Bible teacher in both the academic and church circles around the world. He writes books faster than I can read them. And he has a great passion for introducing people to Jesus. So please join me in welcoming our speaker for tonight, Professor Don Carson. Professor Carson, last night you told us a bit about your family. Tonight, can you tell us a bit about your work? I've outlined it briefly, but can you tell us more about what you do and how you got to be doing it?
Essentially, I wear 4 hats. My job is teaching at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, which is a largish seminary near metropolitan Chicago. And the public records of the seminary say that it's the training school of the Evangelical Free Church of America for training its missionaries and pastors. And then it adds, it is also the Free Church's love gift to the Church of Jesus Christ, so that we train people from a lot of backgrounds. And our lowest courses are at the MDiv level, and they run up to several different tracks for PhDs in biblical studies and theology and so on. So that's one job. And then I'm president of the Gospel Coalition, which is a concatenation of churches and ministers that have a broadly reformed confessionalism that is eager to do expository ministry and plant churches and see the gospel centered on what the Bible actually says. And I suppose it is influential through regionalized meetings and so on, but also through our website. Our website, thegospelcoalition.org, gets between 4 and 8 million hits a month, and has become a way of circulating a lot of biblical truth. Everything on our site is free. Go and help yourself. It's free, like the gospel. And then I write now and then. That's the 3rd hat. And then the 4th, I speak in places like Kuala Lumpur. You know, what kind of, that's the 4th hat.
So you do academic teaching, you preach to Christians, you head this Christian organization. So you do a lot of preaching and writing to Christians, but at the same time, I understand that you deliberately spend some of your time telling non-Christians about Jesus. There's so much work to do in the Christian world. Why do you prioritize that?
Well, partly because the Great Commission does not make an exemption for New Testament professors. It needs to be done, and it's one of the things, that I do. Moreover, just as there are some people who are more gifted than I at addressing the gospel in some other little niche, working in the academic world is something that I do know how to do. It's part of my background. But it's also a way of keeping me fresh. That is to say, it's possible for a pastor of a church to spend all his life speaking to Christians, thinking about Christian things, teaching Sunday school classes, taking a funeral, preaching again Sunday night, prayer meetings, and everything has to do with Christians, that somehow they begin to lose touch with what ordinary people are thinking outside the fabric of the church. And they just begin to feel more and more dated. They use more and more Bible cliches and so on, but they don't know how to interact with ordinary people. You can't win people to Christ if you don't love them. You can't win people to Christ if you don't communicate with them. So it's possible for me to spend all my time during the week at seminary, Christians, and then go to church on Sunday, more Christians, write books, more Christians everywhere, you know? And somewhere along the line, therefore, I have to put myself in situations where I know and love and hear and listen to and interact with people who are not Christians. So partly I do it because I want to see people converted. Partly I do it because I know that for myself, I need to be put in situations of confrontation and dispute and back and forth to keep myself alive and alert and understanding what's going on in the culture.
Thank you. Last night you told us about your book, The God Who Is There, and how you came to write it. I understand there's a video series that can go with the book. Can you tell us how that came about and how that's been used in different parts of the world?
There was a church, the church that John Piper was pastor of, Bethlehem Baptist in Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, that asked me to do the whole 14 sessions over 2 long weekends, 3 on a Friday night, 4 on a Saturday, and to do 7 thus one weekend and 7 the next weekend. And they would try to organize things to bring in their friends. Now, what kind of friends bring people to 7 hours of talks? Well, 7 hours the next week. They have to be very good friends. But we had about 500 or 600 people over the 2 weekends, and about 40% of them were unbelievers. So we did it live, therefore, in that kind of context, a little less formal in the book. And then eventually we did the same thing in French. The books were translated into French, and I was brought up in French. So in Montreal, we organized something similar, and I redid the whole series over 2 weekends in Montreal, French Canada. And it's in Chinese, but I didn't do it in Mandarin. I believe in the wisdom of that great American philosopher, Clint Eastwood, who said, a man's got to know his limitations. But what has happened on that one is the Chinese people who did it decided that they would simply put in subtitles. So in some parts of the world, it's gone into subtitles. And what we have discovered is that although the whole series is really designed for explaining the Bible to complete biblical illiterates, we've discovered that very often it's Christians who've enjoyed the series because it's helped them put their Bibles together. I'm sure that there are a lot of sincere Christians in the world who, they could name the books of the Bible, but they don't really know how it works, how it holds together. They have a pious thought here and a devoted quotation from there, but how the whole thing hangs together, they're uncomfortable with it. So that I've known some Christians of 20 years walk with Christ who have used the series, either the book or the video, and it's turned on some lights for them. My wife leads a women's Bible study, and in that group, this is not what I recommend. Good grief, it's a lot of work. But what they did in that series week by week is they would read the book first. They would read the chapter first. Then they would come together and watch the video. And so the video is 45 to 55 minutes long in each case. And then they would have discussion about it, because there is a leader's guide as well with study questions and all of that. So that meant for a long evening, but they did that for 14 weeks. And most of the women in that group were Christians, some of them of long standing, but it was sort of helping them put their Bibles together. So it's gone off in angles that I hadn't predicted and hadn't foreseen, but God does all kinds of surprising things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Carson.